What's fascinating is my own real life surrender experiment. And it's so crazy because life often brings us full circle to help us connect deeper within ourselves and to help us connect deeper with God. One of the most defining things of my life is loving somebody who is a sober alcoholic now, but dealt with active alcoholism. And many, many years ago, this person was in my life, and I loved them dearly. And loving them and seeing them suffer really brought me down to my knees. I remember at the time I had 1-year-old twins, and I was going through the things with twins. I was nursing my children. I was feeding them morning, day, and night, which is a full-time job in itself, and with 2. And all while this person in my life was struggling very deeply. And as someone who had previously been very type A, had been able to get shit done and just, make things happen and control situations and be type A and have things work out exactly the way that they needed to. In this case, I found myself extremely powerless. And the more I tried to help them, the more I tried to control their drinking, I found myself struggling with a deep, profound sense of powerlessness inside of me. And there was nothing I could do to change it. There was nothing I could do to fix it. And on some level, I blamed myself as like maybe I caused it. Maybe some part of me caused it. And somehow my ego was big enough to think that I had any kind of control over the situation or I could cause anything like that. And at the time, going through all the things, the insanity of trying to control it, trying to find the drinking, trying to find all the symptoms of the drinking, trying to control when they were sober, trying to control when they were drunk, trying to control everything. I found myself, the more I tried to control, the crazier I became. And the craziest thing was when this person had a meeting with a counselor at an outpatient program, and I was designated to take them. Turned out that in this 30-day program in LA, where I lived at the time, this person made it 2 weeks into the program before they binged and they were completely out of commission for multiple days. And lo and behold, towards the end of that second week, there was a counselor meeting, and this outpatient counselor was assigned to help this person in my life. And it was time to take them to the appointment. I had my 2 little babies with me, and I go there to wake them up, and they are completely incapacitated. And in my insanity, I thought, well, if I can only get them to this meeting, if I can only get them into the car, if I can only get them to show up at this meeting, that is going to solve everything, because this person had been struggling with drinking for a really long time, and I had no control over it. I had no impact over it. I had no ability to change it. And at this point, I was losing sleep. I was just so stressed out, so overwhelmed. And I just found myself just anxious beyond anything that I'd ever experienced in my life. So I remember going through the motion, getting them into the car, barely conscious. And I had 2 kids in the back of the car, and I'm taking care of the kids, and I've got the double stroller in the trunk. I remember this as if it happened yesterday, and I took them into that meeting with the counselor. At which point the counselor sees this person who is wasted double beyond the legal blood alcohol limit of the state. Looked at that person, said that person needs to go to an inpatient program, a 30-day rehab program. And you, Karishma, need to go into Al-Anon. And I found myself completely livid. I'm the one with the problem. I need help. I can't believe you said that. And they just gave me some Al-Anon brochures, and they told me to get on my way to get this person the help that they needed and to get myself into the freaking program. And sometimes when you've tried everything that you can to make things happen, sometimes you find yourself knowing that there's nothing you can do, and something bigger, something that's outside of your awareness can happen. And I decided to go into my first Al-Anon meeting within that week, and this person in my life ended up going to their first 30-day program. I go into the rooms of Al-Anon and I am just livid. I was so resentful. I had spent years of my life trying to just keep shit together. I had spent the last several months trying to keep myself together, trying to keep the household together, trying to keep this person together. And I just felt this overwhelming burden of responsibility with everything. And I had no capacity to receive anything anyone told me. And I went into the rooms of Al-Anon. And the first thing I heard was, you didn't cause it. You can't control it. You can't cure it. Wait, I'm not responsible? How is that possible? I'd spent so much energy, time, and just focus on taking the blame and the shame and like feeling this dooming feeling of failure, like I had failed everyone and I had failed everything. And somehow I was in a room with people that had gone through the same experience. No one goes into Al-Anon because it's fun. No one goes into Al-Anon because life is great and oh my God. People go into Al-Anon because their life is a hot mess and they have exhausted all of their options and they found themselves going into this room where supposedly they can get help. And I was one of those people. And I heard laughter in the room. I heard so much laughter. I heard joy in the room. And the more laughter I heard, the more it pissed me off, frankly. Because how dare they be happy? How dare they have a different experience? And how dare they be okay? And why the heck are they in a self-help room, basically, when they did nothing? It was the fault of the alcoholic. And I was completely in my victimhood. I was completely in that blaming and shaming and resentful mode of my existence. But I can tell you right now, in those greatest moments in my life, when you stop, God starts. When you start, God starts. And I had exhausted every possibility in my life to help this person. I thought they were going to die. I didn't know if they were going to live or they were going to die. And there was nothing I could do. And for the first time in my life, God put me in front of angels that over the next 6 to 12 months helped me get back on my feet. And as I saw them leading into trust with God and surrender with God, and Al-Anon is a surrender program. Al-Anon is a program that I would highly recommend in a heartbeat. It helped me get my life back. It helped me get my mental health back. It helped me start learning how to focus on myself and take care of me and to keep things simple and to start living in the present one day at a time and to give God everything that I couldn't handle. And there was a lot that I could not handle at the time. And slowly by surely, I found myself letting go of control more and more. One of the first things that happened in one of the meetings I went to, there was a question that was asked. The question was, how do you feel? How do you feel? And up until that point, I had been so good in reading the room. I could tell you how my boss felt. I could tell you how my siblings felt. I could tell you how my ex-husband felt. I could tell you how my kids felt, my parents felt. The list goes on. No one had ever asked me how I had felt. I had never asked me how I had felt. And for the first time in my life, I went in that room and I sat in that circle and I started connecting with how I actually felt. And I found myself expressing that I was sad, I was angry, I was happy, and the whole myriad of emotions between all of that. And as I shared every week, going to those meetings consistently, I started to learn who was Karishma for the first time, going through Al-Anon and being around experiencing active alcoholism taught me that I couldn't depend on someone that was undependable, that I had no power over everything. And the only person I had control over was myself. And leaning into that every day, one day at a time, I learned what it was like to live with crazy situations. I learned what it was like to find the groundedness in myself. I learned to create a safety and security within myself that for the next 10 plus years before my divorce, I learned to create this foundation of who is Karishma? What is she like? What does she love? How does she build herself up from the inside on such a deep way? And that experience when I was 30 years old was huge. And it really had shaped me. And, going from being a full-time mom for 1.5 to 2 years to really putting myself out there when I did get back on the job market, I found myself now attracting positions that were double what I'd previously made. Finding roles that actually allowed, they actually valued me in the way that corporate America only can. And I found this peace within myself. I found this calm within myself. Despite all the chaos, despite everything, I learned to be good with me. And that gift, and I look back and I remember going into Al-Anon meetings and I would hear people talking about being grateful for the alcoholic. And I remember thinking, that's never going to be me. Are you kidding me? Like, they created so much devastation in my life. It's all their fault, so on and so forth. And over time, I started being that person. Over time, I started going, oh my God, I am so grateful because for the first time in my life, I got out of this codependency that I had in this relationship. And I started finding independence, interdependence within me and with God. And, I remember this beautiful share I'd heard at some point in my life in Al-Anon, where this man had come about and he talked about, he took his hand and he opened his hand and he said, I used to clench my fists so tightly, thinking that I had all the control, thinking I had all the power. But it's when I finally opened my hand up and allowed God to step in. When I stopped, God started. When I stopped, God started. And God took this person that I loved. And I imagined God just putting this beautiful blanket over this person that I loved, that I had no control over. And I remember just gently giving that person in that blanket over to God. And those words from 12 years ago still sit with me today. Because, oh my God, I learned to let go of everything. I learned to let go of everything. And I started leaning into this beautiful relationship with God. And I was raised in a religious household where there was, like most religions, this idea of fear and hell and doing good, doing bad. And the God that I had in my life up until then was this God that I feared. And for the first time, I started to cultivate a very different relationship with the God inside of me. The God inside of me was my friend. The God inside of me loved me unconditionally. The God inside of me had my back and provided me guidance and provided me insight. And the more I let go of my attachment to the alcoholic, it was so profound because I found peace and I found joy and I found love in my heart. And instead of doing things in my old type A ways where it was about getting things done and being here and being helicopter mom and all the things, instead I learned for the first time to keep things simple, to learn how to value me, to learn how to honor me, to learn how to take care of myself. And it's so crazy because fast forward 10 years or so, when COVID hit, that very ability to find peace and resiliency in the face of uncertainty, I started sharing those principles online. And that became the impetus for my coaching program, where it was really about being good with you no matter what was happening, to find strength in you no matter what was happening, to find certainty within you no matter what was happening. And I started sharing this podcast about things coming full circle. Well, yesterday, I found out some news that someone very, very dear to me is pregnant with someone who's an alcoholic. And when I found out the news, I was devastated. Because as much as I wanted to be happy with them or for them, I was really sad because I know what it's like to live with alcoholism. I know what it's like to feel so powerless. I know what it's like to feel so alone. And after sitting with the pain of it, and all of a sudden I was transported 13, 14 years in the past. It hit my heart. What if I don't know? What if just like God saved me, the alcoholism and living with it and finding the rooms of Al-Anon and finding God within my heart saved me and helped me find me from within? What if that's the very gift that this person gets to receive too? To find themselves in the midst of craziness, of chaos, of anxiety, of the most profound powerlessness. And this morning I woke up and I remembered, that's right. God had my back. He always has, and he always will. And I feel like going through that years ago and finding that foundation of Karishma, being Karishma deep inside, connected to herself, connected to God, that provided me the strength and the courage to file for divorce years later, to find who I was despite everything years later, to learn how to love myself unconditionally years later. You see, for the longest time I thought safety and security was with who you married, having a house, your support system, your culture, your identity, marriage, not marriage, job, not job. I thought it was all these external things. But it turned out that the safety that I desired, deeply desired, and had all along was actually inside of me.